Hi, my name is Adam Lucan, and I've been teaching AP with We Service, and I incorporate it into Computer Science A, and I teach at Vernon Hills High School. Today, I'll be talking about my background, the timeline I run AP We Service. I'm going to break down how I investigate and learn, and then the action plan, how my students take action, and then how we report and celebrate. And I'll even talk about some projects that my students have worked on and are doing this year. So, I've been teaching computer science for the past 11 years. I've been doing AP We Service for the past four. In 2017, I started with Computer Science A, incorporating the education teaching module, and I still do that today. In 2018, I started also incorporating it into AP Computer Science principles, and I have a little bit more of each unit is kind of a different global goal for sustainable development. And then this past year, I started to incorporate it into a post AP class where students get an entire semester to create a project. Over here is just one example of an app that students created this past year that helps young women empower themselves. So, just a little timeline is I start in August with the Investigate to Learn, and this is going to really be the longest component of it. And there's even some overlap because I'm mixing in my learning content with service, and I sprinkle it in pretty much throughout the year. Around November or December, students start figuring out when they need to or what their projects are and to get into groups and start to figure out what their projects should look like. Around February, the students start to create a full blown project. And then in the end of May, for my students, is when we do our big celebration. And then I also even incorporate for some of the groups who go into the summer as well. So, part one is I use access to education in my AP Computer Science A class. And what I love about this module is there are awesome hooks to just get students really invested. Week one of my class, I do a project where it has to do with teaching a homeless man coding and then kind of the opportunities that gives different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So there's group activities, there's discussions, there's labs, there's awesome coding labs that I use throughout the year, but I also kind of create some of my own little mini labs. And one thing too that I found is that when you let students kind of create their own labs with, hey, I want you to be focusing on like a certain concept for programming, but also incorporate your own take on service learning, that it's fun to see kind of how they might surprise you. So, um, definitely groups are going to struggle with this a little bit, but you just help point them in the right way. And this is just a mix of content plus discussion, and it's pretty low stakes. So, this has always been a very successful introduction. So, once the students have gotten a little taste of access to education, I don't have my kids choose that as their only option. I give them kind of free range to let them decide what they really want to create their project on. And then I let them, group up with people who have similar passions. I usually try to keep it in pairs, but if they want to be in groups of three or four, they certainly can. I just make sure that each person kind of knows what their role is. I use a collaboration tool called Trello, which students are keeping their weekly goals, their um, kind of broken down tasks. It's so important to get students to understand how to break down a big project into smaller ones, which this is one big reason I love this is because that's a huge aspect of computer science. And then I also teach my students about an MVP, which is minimal viable product, which is also an important concept of computer science. And so I help the students figure out you want, you have this huge, lofty project. It's got all these aspects to it, but what's the minimal like goal here? Let's first address that and then get all the other aspects to of it to work. And then weekly, I just check in with them using Google Classroom to just ask how their goals were, if they met them, and what help they might need. I at this point is many groups decide to reach out to community partners, and I've helped them with that. And I will say that when they get a community partner into their group, it goes from a good project to an amazing project. So my recommendation is stay local, parent surveys, social media like LinkedIn and Facebook, local restaurants. There's grants out there. Um, there's different clubs. Like I teach computer science club, but I reach out to the environmental club and to different diversity clubs and find how we can kind of collaborate together. I find in their group someone who's willing to take the lead, and I work with them to kind of figure out how to reach out to these different community members and help them figure out how to incorporate them. Here's just some projects where students created an app for a speech pathology app that helps young students learn how to speak when they have speech deficits. And over on this, I have an app where students created a logger for the National Honor Society. So now students are starting to create action with, hey, we've got this plan. Let's start making this minimal viable product. So what I've actually found is like, this is to me the easiest stage because the students have already planned it out and now they're actually putting it into place with all like breaking down the task, assigning roles, and I just still check in weekly to see how they're doing, and it's exciting. And the one biggest thing I say is celebrate the successes early and often. And here, a student created just a fun little app that this is kind of the beginning of COVID of last year, where focused on all the positives. So I have a little event called the Innovation Fair, which I host in the end of May, where I get judges from the community, parents, sponsors. I have speakers, and then also prizes. Here, this student won a $1,000 scholarship from Baxter Credit Union for his service project. So after we have this big fun celebration, it's easy to report to AP Digital Portfolio. So just some examples, some projects from this past year and some projects students are working on this upcoming year. Students are creating an Earth Day app, which a local company actually needs because in the past they've always done something in person and now they're trying to digitalize that. Students are also trying to create a cool coding camp for underrepresented students. And actually, this past week, we had one of our first girls' night of code, where a bunch of middle school students started their first of a couple in a series of learning programming. And then in this past year, we really focused on how to help those struggling most affected by COVID. So I had students printing 3D printing, like PPE. They had whole projects about getting food to those who need it. And the students are so creative with thinking of solutions. Here's one of them as well on this right. A student created this website called Reflect, which kind of just helps people be mindful as they are on their computer all day now. So in closing, the community connections, the partnerships that the students are making with themselves and their teams, the real world applications, these experiences are just so worthwhile for the students that AP We Service really, like, I think most teachers are always worried about timing and pacing. it doesn't take much time, and it is so worthwhile that I have students coming back who've graduated and say that this is what I remember the most out of any class, is being able to like create a project, run with it, and just really um, enjoy the entire experience. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Best of luck.